Everybody again. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn. And we welcome everybody. Hope everyone's having a good Monday. And just allowing a few more people to join. I've turned the recording on, so we'll be able to send a recording out after we're done later on today. Just a quick overview before we dig into the discussion point today. Our goal really is to help transfer some knowledge that we've have from years and years of experience as Unanet AE partners. We're trainers and users for the system, so we've gained a lot of knowledge. So we're excited to be able to share some of that knowledge with our community. And we start with the basics. We work up from there, hopefully into some more advanced things for those of you who have been using the system for quite a while. And then after the presentation that we have, we'll have a Q&A session where we can answer any questions. But by all means, you can also put your questions in the chat box, and we can go over those either as we're going or at the end of the presentation as well. And last but not least, any feedback or suggestions on topics, please email those to me, and we can add them to the list. We have a lot of great suggestions, and we've got a nice list going for future Lunch and Learn presentations. So we thank you for sharing those ideas and feedback, and we look forward to learning more and more together. Just a quick overview of what we offer for anybody that's new on the call today. We do outsourced accounting services if you need help there, process analysis and operational support, ongoing support and training for Unanet, as well as custom invoice and report designs and other customizations of the system. We can help with implementation planning and training as well. And yeah, if you need any of that help from us outside of this community lunch and learn, we're more than happy to work with you on a one-on-one basis as well. Excuse me. But without further ado, we're going to get right into today's topic. This is what we started 2 weeks ago, but we had a little hiccup with Unanet doing some kind of unscheduled maintenance of the system, so we had to postpone it. So today we're going to get back into it. We're going to start from the beginning so we don't miss anything. And we're happy to have Tammy Kilhullen from the OAS team to present for us today on under the heading Project Planning, Resource Planning, and Scheduling. So we look forward to learning from Tammy. Whenever you're ready, Tammy, you can take it away.
Thanks, Tim. Hope everybody's having a great Monday. And I will share my screen and we're going to hop right back into it. We'll do a little refresher from, I guess, now a month ago when we started that planning session, when Martha started that for us. Just as a quick reminder, in the desktop application under project management, this is where project planning resides. I currently have my open project plan that we're going to work on today to actually add some resources already pulled up. But I do want to just take a couple minutes here at the beginning and kind of talk through just kind of those new, if I want to create a new plan, and also some of the preferences that may affect when you're actually doing resource schedule. So as a little refresher, once you're in project planning, if you click new up here on that menu bar, if you click just a new plan, you're just going to get an open project plan, the pop-up box adding your code and your name. This is going to create a plan project, so no one can actually charge time or expenses to it. No purchase journals, anything like that. This will just be a project plan. So if there's something that you want to work through to kind of create a contract value or something of that, you can create these project plans starting from here. And again, they would just be visible in project planning. You can see them in the project applet, but again, no one would be able to see those to charge to. So you would kind of do your typical project plan setup here, creating a code. If you have auto numbering turned on, then that can be used with that little wizard. The only thing I do want to point out, and I know name and client are all pretty standard. You will have to create a budget by rate type. And again, if you're trying to build up that contract value, you would want to focus in on that bill rate. And then, of course, how your schedules are. If you use rate schedules, you may want to attach that bill rate schedule to get those correct rates pulled in so that you can get that proper number. You can do multipliers that get a little tricky with seeing pay rates and things of that nature. So that's kind of a more advanced level if your organization wants to kind of build on those multipliers. So I just kind of wanted to point those out here. Also, you do have the ability to do some filtering when you're looking at labor allocation and resources, whether like right now it's defaulted to none. That's kind of my preference, but if you wanted to be very particular and only budget based upon those resources either named in that rate schedule or this project team, you would want to select one of those two items. From the session a month ago, Martha had gone through and created the generic allocations for her project. And now this session, we're going to take it one step further and take it from where we take those generic resources and actually apply them to named individuals. One of those things that can affect who shows up in this grid here on the right, which is your named resources, is here under your preferences under edit. There is a schedule tab. And if you have autofill from rate schedule, it's going to pull in all of those uh, generic resource types from that schedule. So just know that this preference box could influence how you work with this right-hand panel. I've right now just turned on auto calculate dollars from the hours I enter. So that way it'll start calculating the um, kind of scheduled dollar amount, kind of pseudo budget as well, by just entering in hours. So by checking that box, it's going to calculate those hours. Um, if I turn on allow over scheduling, this will allow if you have all of your projects planned out and you have resources on those projects and there's one specific person that you need to use and they look like they're fully scheduled. If you check this allow over schedule, it will allow you to schedule them over their standard 8 hours that might be over on their employee record. Again, autofill from rate schedule, that's going to bring in these generic job titles from your rate schedule, and it will start populating an automatic schedule if you have things in here. I'm not going to look at that one today because we're going to focus on using the actual resource scheduler and the functionality over on that. And then once you're in your project plan and your project's ongoing, you may want to see your actuals. So you may want to turn this on. And so once time and expense gets charged to the project, you could actually see those here in project planning compared to the time that you scheduled for those individuals. And then I'm also just saying we're just going to schedule people Monday through Friday. We're not going to schedule anything on the weekends. So you'll want to make sure you kind of look at that preference tab for your schedule so you know how it's going to interact when you start building your resources out. Okay. Just as a quick refresh, this top left quadrant is where you're going to see your project work breakdown structure, your project schedule, and then if you had entered in a generic labor budget of hours and dollars, those will show up, those that you can just type in. And then again, if you had done allocations, those are going to flow up in through the allocation hours. So those will match up as well as the amount. So now the ones that we're going to focus on is this labor scheduled hours and amount here today. So these will start populating. And as you can see on this pre-design phase of the project, I've gone in already and I've allocated named resources to this phase of the project. What you'll notice is my calendar over here has set itself to match up the dates over here of the phase of the project. However, my date rangefinder likes to like squeeze all the way over, so you may need to extend that out, and then you'll actually see your named people and how they are allocated. So this one's done already, just as a little quick preview. We're going to hop down to one of the other phases here as we walk through the different ways to add resources. I'm going to move this over so that way here we can have a little bit better view into that resource schedule component side. As I did mention, there is a lock feature which will lock your date range in for your phase and task. So that way you make sure that you're planning your named resources in that date range of that schedule. If you want to deviate from that schedule, you can unlock it and you can control the dates that you want to see there. So again, on that first initial schedule, you may want to lock those dates down so that way your calendar stays within that time period of that phase. I'm going to just come down here to this lower right corner. There are 3 buttons down here. I don't know if it comes through well enough through the presentation. The first one is units. So this is when you're on named resources as far as employees, those are going to be hours. So if I want to, I can just kind of plan on hours if I know how many hours I want to kind of schedule. I could also schedule in dollars. So if I flip to the dollars, it's going to change up my grid instead of showing those hours to show the dollar amount that that represents. And then the third option is to show units and dollars. So that way there, if I want to see those 8 hours as equivalent to $1,600, I can see those. So since we already have allocations done and we have some units defined on those phases, I'm going to focus on those units entries. So I'm going to switch back to unit. Okay. And I'm going to come down to the schematic design phase. So once I click on this, this now changed. I did have a setting on there where it brought in some team members. So I had done that. Let me find one that I do not have folks on. There we go. We'll skip over schematic design and head over to design development. We'll come back to schematic design and work on that one. As you notice, my grid is empty. I do not have any resources. My date range is still locked down to the schedule, July 1st through September 3rd. And now I can go about either adding a resource just by coming to the grid line and looking up that person that is a designer. So if I'm looking at my allocation, I have a designer that was allocated for 10 hours. So if I know who my team members are for that, I could start bringing them in individually. And so I can come here and again, it'll bring up my list of staff members. If I knew their code and that I could just type it in, but I'm just going to scroll down and find Richard here on the list. When I pull Richard in, Richard is a designer, so I am working with this allocation of 10 hours. So I have a couple choices as well. How I want to work with this grid. Right now I have it set to the month view, so you can go to a smaller portion and look at it by weeks or even by day. So you can schedule your resources when you're starting that initial plan, depending on how you want to put those hours in and be mindful of when they're supposed to work. I'm going to stick with the month view. That just gives us plenty of real estate to look at. And so for Richard, I'm going to come over to that first month showing up in my grid, and I'm going to click on the first field. And if I use my mouse and click on the other fields, they're going to turn blue, and I'm going to get this ability to auto schedule. And when I do this, there's 4 actual options. So I can do an auto assignment, which just is going to take the number of hours I enter and schedule them out over that 2 months and 3-day time period. Manual is gonna just distribute that start, those hours that I enter from the start date through the end date, and it's gonna look at the hours per day and what my preferences are with my calendar of work days, to come up with the hours that need to be entered into those fields. I'm gonna skip over the percentage of budget for the moment and come over to the percent of allocation. So I could actually, if I had multiple designers I wanted to add to this project, and I only wanted to allocate 50% of those 10 hours from this allocation area, if I enter 50 in the hours box and I have my percent of allocation selected, it's going to allocate those 5 hours over the schedule of the project. So when I click schedule, it takes just a second. And it's gonna, as you can see, I've got a total of 5 hours here, and it allocated those hours across that time period. And so I would need to find another designer to add to the project to allocate those other 5 hours for the total 10 units that was over in the generic allocation. Or of course, I could come back in and know that, hey, maybe Richard is the only person that's going to do that, and those last 5 hours are going to happen right at the end of the schedule, and so I could change this manually to 5.3192 if I wanted to. So again, you have a couple ways that you can work with that row for Richard. And I'm just going to give it a second to save that up. So now I have that total of 10 hours. Okay. And then I can do the same thing with the other 2 job titles. I can do that for the engineering and the architect. So again, if I look at my list of staff and who that needs to be, so my engineer is going to be Dwight. So if I find Dwight on the list, and again, it's pulling in his job title from his employee record. We've got 20 hours to allocate this time. And again, maybe the engineer's only going to work on it in the first 2 parts of the schedule. Maybe there's no time that he needs to work on it in that first week of September. And again, I could do that percent of allocation really easily and do that 100%. If I wanted to do the dollar amount, so if I was working in dollars instead of hours, instead of putting that 100% in the hours, I would put that 100% in the amount, and that would allocate the $4,000 over that 2-month time period. So depending on which style you're working with is going to depend on where you put that percentage when you're using that percentage of allocation option. And I'm not sure why I'm keep getting that error message. So again, I have that 20 hours come in. Now, if you notice, I don't have a dollar amount yet for Dwight. So when we add that architect in, we're going to look at why that dollar amount did not show up. So we've got another 20 hours for an architect. And if I look at my little list here, Gary's going to be our architect on this project. And for this one, again, I could just split his time and add the 10 hours in those first 2 months. Or I'm like, oh, yeah, he's going to have 2 hours here. So maybe it needs to be 8. So again, you can interact with those date ranges, whether you want to use the automated and let it calculate for you, or you can type those in. If you notice that line still has an asterisk on it, so I'm just going to click up to the Dwight's line here, and it should then save Gary's for me. There we go. Okay. But if you notice now, I still don't have information. Still wants to write there on Gary's for that dollar amount. So one of those ways that you can update that is under your tools, you can recalculate rates. and you get to choose which rates you're recalculating. And because we're working on this scheduled, I'm only going to check the box for the scheduled. So that way I don't affect any of the other quadrants. And I'm going to click recalculate. And that hopefully will give me rates for both Dwight and Gary. And if you notice my little range finder for my date range, it's squished all up to July 1st. That is been a known little quirk, so you may want to watch your little range finder in the desktop as you're working through this. Okay. So that's that one way you can get your resources onto your phase of the project is just by, looking them up, knowing who those team members are. If I come down to construction documents, again, I had that blank slate. Another way that you could add your resources is if you have resource groups defined in under project management, you can create resource groups. So if your organization has groups that work together pretty consistently, you could use this option where you select your resource group, and I'm going to say what phase that I want that assigned to. So I'm going to come to construction documents, and I'm going to look at that drop down, and I'm going to pick my beach tower resource group and click add. And if I say autofill, it's going to bring them. Well, it's not going to fill anything in because I did not turn on that autofill on my preferences. So it's just going to bring them in even though I checked that box. So if we give that a second here, my full resource group should load into my construction documents. Let me just try that one more time. Not going to turn on the autofill that time. Was that cancel? I think I hit, no, I hit close. It should have pulled them in. So what did it do for me?
Tammy, try hitting the little refresh button.
Oh, okay, thanks. Usually sometimes it's not liking me today. But that's what I did under schematic design. So I'll show you my resource group real quickly for Beach Tower. So under my resource group for Beach Tower, I pulled all of those folks in with their job title. So I pre-populated my resource group to know who was going to work on it or be part of that team and who my group leader was. So if you haven't explored resource groups, it does come in handy when you're planning if you have that same group of people that always work together on a project. So that's what I did on schematic design was I pulled my resource group in. Okay. And if you notice my range finder, again, did not stick with my date range. So I just always make sure I have that set. Now on this one, I did pull in that whole resource group, but I only have an engineer and a designer. So again, I'm going to just make sure I focus on the engineer and designer, even though these other folks are on here. If you don't have anything planned, they're not going to show up in that resource scheduler area as having hours scheduled for schematic design, even though you have them listed here. And again, I can use those same options. So I've got 50 hours. So if I select that whole time frame, again, using that control key, holding it down and using my mouse, I can allocate my hours that way. And I can use any of the 4 features. So I'm going to just, on this one, kind of come back to this percentage of budget option. And what this does is it works very similar to the percentage of allocation. I'm just going to hit cancel for a second. However, it is going to use that percentage of the total labor budgeted hours, if I use hours, to come in. So again, depending on which field I enter, It's either going to do a percentage of the 150 hours or a percentage of the $25,000 budget. So if I come back over to Dwight, oops, that's fine. And if we did that percentage of budget, so Dwight should have a third of the hours, roughly. So if I do that and click schedule, it's going to schedule those 33 hours over the 3 dates I selected. There we go. Got a little bit, a little shy. Of course, that's that rounding of that third. Is just doing the 33%. And then I could come to the designer, which is Richard. And if I scroll over, I can get that full time frame. And again, so this would be that, we'll just do 67. Let's see if I can get that pretty close there. So that's just going to do that percentage of the budget hours. Again, if I put that percentage in the amount, it's going to budget it based upon that budget amount. So there's a couple different ways, if you did not do allocations, how you could still use that percentage and allocate to a named resource. Let it think here for a second. Okay. And there I had that 100.5 hours scheduled for Richard. Again, if the dollar amounts did not come through, I'm going to come up to my tools and recalculate rates, click on schedule and click recalculate, and it'll give me a total scheduled dollars. Now this may not match because of the half an hour I allocated differently. So that's a couple different ways that you can get your named resources scheduled onto your project plan. And then of course too, we can touch on the different kind of expenses, consultants, and ODCs or that nature. Some folks, because on the expense side, may not have they may not know who may be turning those expenses in. You could use the schedule. It would still be more of a generic, possibly, if you did not have like a named vendor that you knew, or especially like mileage. If you have employees traveling, you may just use that mileage code still in kind of a generic sense in this allocation area. And again, if I'm in units, this is going to be the number of miles driven. And I'm going to go to the so if I do the automatic assignment, it's going to just assign the amount entered and apply it to each schedulable day. So if I know they're supposed to drive like 30 miles per day, let's say, let me stay on the automatic here. It's going to put in 30 miles for each 106 or 148, no, schedulable days are 106. So 106 for 30 miles. And again, if I had added my expense group on there, it would know my mileage rate. And so if I switched over to dollars, it would show the dollar values. So we'll give that. So again, for 2 days here, they're going to drive a total of 60 miles. If I switch over to the dollar view, just so you can see how that functions, I don't think I had a rate schedule attached. So if I did not have a rate schedule, I can come to my little pencil and make sure, switch that to standard instead of test. So let's see if I have mileage in there. Okay. Let me go back to my, okay, I still have my units. I do not have dollars. I'm going to go ahead and try to recalculate my rates for schedule and see if it'll pull those in. I may not have mileage in that expense group, so that may not have been a good one to pull through. Yeah, it's not looking like it. But again, concept wise, if I had mileage in that rate schedule, that would show up. I'll switch it back over to units so that you can see that. Now, if I also had a named, like if I wanted to track in-house printing, of course, I could pull that in and then add in that printing expense code. And again, I could track how many units. So maybe at the end of schematic design, maybe we know we're going to do a pretty large print job and I may have 150 units with whatever our print rate is. So you can kind of combine both a named resource and a generic in the resource schedule for your ODCs and consultants. And so your consultants are going to work pretty similar to the ODCs. So if I switch to an OCC and on schematic design, again, if I'm looking for, Chamberlain and they are a consultant. And then again, this is one where you may want to switch over to the dollars because your units may not make sense for consultants. And of course, when I switch that over, I lose them. I should know better to do that. Consultant. And then again, maybe I anticipate their invoices coming in June for $5,000. And again, I could picking some numbers here. Maybe they start doing a little less work as the time goes down. So again, I could also schedule that using those allocation, those 4 different types as well. Okay. So without diving too deep into like how we could go out to the web, which will be in our next version, you can at this point, if this was fully planned out from here, if you click print, you can actually print your project plan. So it's got my project in here. You may want to make sure that your date range is the full project. So I may need to go back. It's looking at the phase that I'm currently on. If I click back to project level, it would have pulled in the full dates. And we'll go to 1/6. And if I do print, I should have a project plan report that will show me my budget values. If I have any actuals in, then those will start showing up in those actual columns. This section in the center here will show me all of the allocations that were done, so those generic resources. And then if we start scrolling down again, we've got expenses and consultants. But if we scroll down here, we can now see who's been scheduled on the project. And then also, again, once they start charging time to that, you're going to see those actual hours compared to the schedule. And again, I do have scheduled consultants or the schedule ODCs if they're named. So you do get a pretty clean report of what your scheduled individuals are in this view of this report. Let's see. I do want to just mention, I know there's been several clients that have talked about having a project schedule dashboard that has those date ranges of the projects so they can kind of see when different projects start and stop, maybe down to that phase level. There has been some dashboards that have been created by some OAS team members. So if that is something you're interested in, that's something that could be looked at. And with that, we can open up for any questions, and I'll turn it back over to you, Tim.
Thank you so much, Tammy. That was really, really good. Please let us know any questions you have based on that or any other struggles or challenges that you're having with Unanet. We've got most of the OAS team on here, so we can, between Tammy and the others, we can answer questions. While we're opening up to questions, I'm also going to launch a little poll just to get an idea of what everybody, at least on today's meeting, might want to see next as we plan future presentations. So I'll launch that while we're thinking of questions. And again, any questions, just go ahead and feel free to unmute, ask your question, or you can type it in the chat box as well. Tammy did a great job covering that, so there may not be too many questions, but again, feel free to ask any that you have. All right, we've got one here. It said, Justin's asking, can someone contact me pre-made dashboards? Absolutely, Justin. I can contact you afterwards and go over that as with you. Discuss the capabilities as well. Another question is, hi, can Unanet run report of resources, projects planned to an individual? Would you, there you go.
Sure. Sorry, I had turned myself on mute. So one of the things we did not look at was the resource scheduler area. So after you have your projects planned out, and I guess I need to click share again here. One of the things that you can under project management, there is resource scheduler, and you can see by employee or by project for a date range. So again, if I went back to January of this year, and again, I can say for 30 days, I can change this to whatever time period, maybe weeks might be better. Maybe if we look at just 4 weeks, so like the 4 weeks of January. And if I look at all project types and their status, and I click load schedule, I can see how employees are scheduled, and you can determine kind of at a glance, so like a heat map type setting. Again, if they're that kind of beige color, I don't know if that shows up or on the screen, there's nothing scheduled for that employee at that time. You will also see generic resource if it's generic. If they're blue, they're under scheduled. Red means they're overscheduled, and green means they're balanced. And it's going to look at what you said as kind of what your hours per day are. So if I change this to be between 5 and 7, my heat map, when I click load schedule, will change some depending on that setting there. So again, kind of at a glance, you can see that. And then if we click on a single employee, if you click on the work breakdown structure, we should be able to see what Mary is scheduled for. So if I click on the 110 hours, let me pin that down. Love it when it does that for me. You can see those. Great. Let me not pin it down. Maybe that'll help. You'll be able to see those hours and all the projects that they're scheduled for and what job title they're supposed to do. So that's one way you could look at it. And again, if you want to like look at it more on a project basis, so if I came down to my, oh, these are in alphabetical order, my resources here. So if I click on that 17 hours there in January, I can see it's all of Gary assigned to that project for those first 3 days of the month. So does that help answer your question?
Hi, Tammy. They're very helpful, but I was wondering if that can be printed.
Let me think.
The report that can do it. So I guess more of a question.
There's a project plan report, but I don't know if there's an employee-based one. This is going to run it by for the project. But I don't believe I can because you're looking just for an employee and like to see what they're
Well,
scheduled on.
ideally, if I was in an ideal world, I'd be able to print everyone in the firm to look at who's available, who's not, and sit with all the PMs or principals to decide who's available and to work on the project, or with even marketing.
Yeah,
Right.
so a lot of folks will use this resource scheduler so that way they can see the employees and see what they're currently scheduled for. And so if, Lewis doesn't have enough work, then you could offload some of that time off of either Teresa or Mary to Lewis if they're in that same category. So that's what the intention of that resource scheduler is, because you can from here, if I wanted to, I could, and again, this is kind of another whole topic, but I could move, I could come in and change one of the hours coded to Teresa and move it to Lewis.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I see the information. I'm just wondering if there's a way to print it. Right,
Yeah,
because in theory, as I've handed out, I mean, back to the days of paper, or
yeah,
even to just be able to print this out.
yeah. I'm not knowing of an employee-based report. Does anyone else on the team think of a employee-based schedule?
There's one in the marketplace. It's called My Schedule, but it's only for whomever's logged in.
Yeah,
So it could probably be customized. Go to the dashboard too, Tammy, the labor resource schedule, and that might work.
This, are you referring to this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it shows you your employees, and then if you click into them, it should update the activity at the top. So if you pick, yeah, like,
Let me pick on someone that I scheduled time for.
yeah.
So maybe being able to move away from paper and using the interactive dashboard might be another option as well.
And note in here, you can export these. So if you want to export to Excel and print that is an option as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Justin actually shared that you can export using Control-Shift-E, which is a nice
Yeah.
shortcut.
From your dashboard, the Control-Shift-E does not work. You have to use the little box with the up arrow to export to Excel, but most other grids inside of Unanet, yes, you can use the keyboard shortcut.
Which you could do in resource scheduler, right, Tammy? Is that the Control-Shift-E? I haven't tried it in there. See if
I have not either. Yeah, it looks like it will.
Yep.
I don't think it's detailed though.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah, it's going to look just like this grid. It's not going to show you the projects that they're, it's not going to show you this one,
right.
that level of detail. Great item to put out there on that suggestion portal for Unanet.
And we can always create a customized report if you're ever interested in that as well.
Another question here, is it best practice to be using the accrual balances in Unanet prior to starting to use resource planning?
Like benefit accruals, is that the question? Oh.
Yes, it is.
So kind of interesting that you brought that up. So the planning doesn't take any of that into an account. So what you may want to do is actually create like a out of office project that may capture both like your company holidays and those vacation PTO like request possibly. But it's not going to go over and look at what balance an employee may have as far as they have 100 hours of vacation to take this year. So one of the things in my past life is we actually had an out of office, and then we loaded all of our company holidays, and then we actually used the time off management dashboard. Sorry, a little sidestep here. And so when an employee put a request in, once it was approved, we had a second customization that actually put it in that out of office project plan. So that way they could see when the teams were looking at the resource scheduler, that they could see like someone may be over allocated, and it may be because they also scheduled vacation time, and so that would show up here, and so then they could juggle those hours, the billable time, to another person while they're for vacations. So that could be an option of actually making an out of office project plan.
Really nice. Also in the chat there, Courtney Drews posted the link to the marketplace, and there's some tools and things that are downloadable for scheduling as well. So you can check that out. Thank you, Courtney.
Thanks, Tammy, for running through all this. It's super helpful. I'm excited to use project planning. I was just aware of scheduler being useful so far, and I see how scheduler has actuals, kind of comparables with it built in, and also in the dashboard. And I'm wondering what the easiest and/or best practice way to compare project plans to actuals is, and like converting a project plan into a schedule also.
Okay, there's a couple multiple parts there. Probably the easiest to kind of see your scheduled to actuals to what you scheduled would be to bring in that dashboard of labor schedule summary. What that'll allow you to do is you can actually see, like if you pick your project, let me pick one that has time on it, which of course I don't have any that are budgeted, but you could actually see who worked on it. So you could compare their scheduled to their work hours, and you can control the date range in this dashboard. So again, this is looking for, 3 months at a time. You may want to, focus in on like just the month of February. So once like the month of February is complete, you wanted to see what that was scheduled and how did they work those hours. Again, you can look at it on a weekly basis overall. Again, you could also key in, if I don't want to go on a project basis, if we wanted to look at an employee. So again, if we look at Dwight, so again, he was scheduled to work on Beach Tower, but all of his time charges so far in February have been on this other project. So you could kind of see those kind of variants of things going on. And then you could actually do those reallocations over in the resource scheduler. So that was one part of your question.
Yeah, the resource scheduler looks like more manual input than the planner, as far as I could tell. Like the planner has the automated portion too.
Right. The scheduler is really to make those modifications. So like, oh, Teresa's going to be out and I need to just move that time to someone else. That's where you're just going to make those quick changes instead of kind of going back into your project plan and adding Lewis to the list and then swapping those hours out. So this is just to make those kind of on the fly changes to this who's scheduled to work on the projects.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than coming into that project plan and, coming into finding, that, oops, let me get on to labor and not expenses here, and then, swapping them out that way. You could do it, but again, that whole intent of that resource scheduler is to make those changes. And there was a third part to your question.
Well, so yeah, I'm interested in how I compare a plan to what people are already working on, or scheduled to work on, and then, you know, how to compare that, and then how a project plan converts, does it convert easily into resource scheduler? So I don't have to like recreate everything I put into the plan?
Right. So all of those hours that I just put into this plan is over in Resource Scheduler. So if we went and looked
So it
at,
automatically goes in there?
yep. So again, let me
Oh,
switch over to units here so we can, so you can kind of see it happen. So if I come out to Gary's line item, and I'm going to come out here to April, and I'm going to put 50 hours just manually.
yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and just do a little refresh just so it kind of thinks about it. If I come out to Resource Scheduler and we switch to April 1st and load on Gary, we see, I mean, it doesn't, you know, it's got that time frame. I probably need to do 5 weeks because it's probably extended out a little bit farther. But you
Okay.
would see
So
those
in
50
download.
hours. It is, yeah, it is real time. So you would get, and again, if I click on that 11 and look at work breakdown structure, it's all my beach tower resource project.
Oh, excellent. You probably
Yeah.
said this and I missed it. I'm sorry. That's
Oh,
awesome.
no,
Thank you.
not a problem.
Thank you, Michael. Great discussion.
And then Michael, just kind of going back, that report I showed. So when you're in planning and you go to print, it does this project plan. It will start showing you actuals in there as well.
Okay.
So that could be,
Yeah,
and
I'm looking for comparing this to other projects that they're scheduled for.
okay,
You
gotcha.
know, seeing that, and I see that's in the scheduler though.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess
Yep.
that's the place where you look at it,
Sure. Yep.
in the scheduler dashboard, or that, what is it called? The labor
Uh,
schedule summary dashboard?
that labor, yep, labor schedule summary, and that's a marketplace dashboard.
Yep, I got that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great questions today.
Yeah, really good. Pretty good answers too, Tammy. All right. Well, if there's any other questions, please feel free. Oh, there's one more. Do the actual hours replace the plan hours in resource schedule?
No. So what you will see, let me go to that dashboard and look at one that has actual hours. So if we went out to that project in planning, again, this is one of those preferences items. So if I come up to my edit and preferences on the schedules tab, if I say include actuals, I'm actually going to see some of those. So you'll see my dots changed. So red is for scheduled, blue dot is for actuals, and I may have to take the lock off so we get date ranges. I don't know when those timesheet charges happen. But you would actually see, and let's see here, who was it that worked on that project? I don't know if I brought in used. Yeah. So I think he worked on that one there. So if I start adding Dwight in on this list, I don't know if it's going to make me save or not. And I don't know the date range of the charges. Well, actually I do. Dashboard, I did that for February 2025. So see, now I have those light blue dots, and I'm going to extend my window here, you'll notice next to Dwight's name, I'm going to have a plus sign, and it's going to show me the actuals. And so because I have this set to a month view, it just shows me all 100 hours. So even if Dwight wasn't planned on this project, he would flow in onto that, into the resource grid. Let's go up to this one that has 40 hours. So like Kelly here, I didn't add Kelly. It was just because of her timesheet entry, but I can see those 40 hours that she charged. And again, I can switch to a day view. And then again, if I expand that out, I can see what days that Kelly, but it would not replace the the planned hours. It's more to compare them to. So, you know, Kelly has no planned hours, but worked 40 hours.
Very nice. Thank you. Good question. All right. I think we're getting pretty close to the top of the hour. Let me just share my.
I can stop sharing, Tim.
No, you're good. Next time we meet together, April 14th, we're going to continue one last, just to round out the topic of project planning. We're going to talk on the web version functionality. There's a few extra functions in there, and so we'll talk about that a little bit next time we meet. So thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you on April 14th for the next one.